Hey, what's up, y'all? We back for another video. So you're a wedding photographer like me, right? You shoot weddings. I shoot probably 20 to 25 weddings a year, and probably 85 to 90% of those weddings are me solo shooting those weddings, either with an assistant or just by myself, but not a second shooter. And every once in a while I get a booking where a client is like, hey, I want to go with your 2-shooter package. So now I'm like, okay, so I need to link up with a photographer, a second shooter. I don't do too many of these a year, maybe 2 to 3 a year. So I'm not working with the same photographers monthly every few weeks. So I need to kind of give them some pointers as to like what I need from them. Now, what I'm about to share with y'all today it's not law. It's not law. You don't have to do this. These are just things that over my 13-year journey being a photographer, wedding photographer, I've learned and work best for me. You have to figure out what works best for you as a main shooter who is looking to hire second shooters. But what I'm gonna share with you today are my things, my top. I'm gonna give y'all maybe 7 to 8, but these first 3 or 4 that I give you are like my non-negotiables. You have to get these correct because they're that important. So my number 1 non-negotiable second shooter tip is sync your time with my camera. I cannot explain to you how important this is. Syncing your cameras is so important. I shoot with 2 cameras, R5 specifically. I don't care if you shoot with a R6, a Canon 5D Mark IV, Mark III, whatever you have is fine with me, but I need these times to be synced. It is a catalog nightmare when my cameras are lined up and you're second shooting for me and you're getting these different angles and these different shots, and our cameras even being 45 seconds off from each other. If you're shooting the ceremony and my photos are of the bride coming down the aisle and then your photos are of them giving speeches, so like every 4 photos it's bride coming down the aisle and then a photo with them giving speeches because you're off by a minute or 2, it's just not gonna work. You have to manually go in and correct them all. And on wedding days, I typically shoot 3,000 to 4,000 photos, and then my second shooter will shoot anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 more photos. So we're talking 5,000 to 6,000 images in a catalog, and they're all off. It's a nightmare. Sync your time with your photographers. The most simple way for me is just simply going into the menu of your camera and changing it, being next to each other and saying, hey, set the time for January 1st, 12 p.m. noon. And then on 3, we're gonna hit go. 1, 2, 3, go, boom. Hit it all at the same time. All of the cameras at the same time. Some people use like the world clock method and take a picture, and there's more advanced ways to do it. I don't really understand that. I just know like if you're next to me and we just go in our menu and we just line it up and we hit go at the same time, it's gonna be fine for the rest of the day. That's just how I do it. Simple, easy, clean. My second tip is shoot everything on daylight. I don't care if you're in the clouds. I don't care if you're outside during daylight. I don't care if it's a dark room with magenta light. I don't care what's going on. Shoot everything on daylight. And the reason for shooting everything on daylight is because if you shoot in auto white balance, which I've realized a lot of photographers like to do, when you pull it up into Lightroom or however you catalog your images, you're gonna have images that are warm, you're gonna have images that are cool, you're gonna have images that are magenta, you're gonna have photos that are more green. The problem with auto white balance is it takes a guess, an AI generated algorithmic guess, and they look decent on the back of the camera, but when you pull these things up and every other photo is warm or cool or magenta or green, it's a nightmare. I would rather every photo look off on the back of the camera, but if they're all shot on daylight, once I figure out the proper color balance, I can fix them all at the same time. So if we have 500 images in this catalog that were all taken in the same room within 30 minutes of each other, even if they're all off, if they're all too warm or they're all too cool, once I figure out that proper color temperature on one of them, I can copy it over. But if I have 500 images on auto white balance and every second or third or fourth photo is a different temperature, it's almost impossible to correct that. And I know some photographers say, as long as you shoot in raw and you move the temperature slider over, it'll work out. In theory, that makes sense, but from being a photographer and editing my own photos for over 13 years, I'm telling you, for some reason, it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. So for my second shooters, I say, hey, shoot everything, please, in daylight temperature. And if it looks off on the back of the camera, that's fine. fine, I'll fix it in post. Tip number 3 is to not shoot anything under 1/200th of a second. Don't do it. I know they have all of these rules of thumb, like if you're shooting with a 50mm, you should be able to get away with shooting at 1/50th of a second. Yeah, that's cool, again, in theory, but in real life, especially with photos where people are moving in them, or people are walking down the aisle, or somebody is fixing a dress or putting a jacket on, that motion you're gonna see in the photos. And I would much rather have a slightly darker photo that I can correct in post than a blurry photo, because once the photo has motion blur that I don't want in it on purpose, the photo is useless to me. I can't tell you how many times I've pulled up photos from a second shooter and it's ceremony time and the bride and the groom are walking down the aisle, or their wedding party is walking down the aisle, or they're doing anything that involves motion. Maybe they're just having a cheers before the ceremony and the photos are blurry, and I'm like, why are these photos are blurry? And then I look up into the top corner of Lightroom where it gives you all that metadata and it says like 1/80. And I'm like, why would they shoot this 1/80? And then I realized it was a dark room, and I was like, oh, they must have dropped the shutter speed down to compensate, because they may or may not have been using a flash and things of that nature. And I'm just like, that's it, like, and it's happened so many times that I just have like a checklist now, and I tell that to all of my second photographers. I don't care if it's dark. I'd rather a darker photo than a blurry photo. My 4th tip is, if you are not comfortable shooting at f1.4, just f2 to f2.8 the whole day. f1.4 looks phenomenal when you get it right, but if you miss, you miss. And you know what I mean, photos aren't usable. So if you're not good at getting that proper focus on the eye, I focus a lot on the eye, unless of course it is specifically a ring shot. If you're not good at that, or you just don't feel comfortable doing that, just f2 to f2.8 the whole day. I'm gonna do my part, you do your part. What I need most from my second shooter is to give me additional options. I still shoot weddings as if I'm the only photographer there, even when I have a second shooter there. So when I get my photos from my second shooter, they're complementing what I have. They're giving me different angles, different focal lengths, but I should, and I shoot as a first photographer in a way that if all of the photos from my second shooter don't work out, I can still deliver a proper album. Of course, we're never hoping for that scenario, but that's how I shoot. Number 5 is use the wedding party, please. And one scenario that happens a lot, because this is usually the part of the day where I'm separated from my second shooter, and it's when I go with the bride for prep, and then when the second shooter goes with the groom for prep. That's typically how it goes. I go with the bride, the second shooter will go with the groom. And a lot of times I get back to my computer the night of, the next day of, and I'm looking through all of the second shooter's images, and the groom is putting on their jacket, putting on their vest, putting on their tie, and they're like this. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but most grooms don't wear suits all the time. Like, I happen to be a man who wears suits all the time because I'm a wedding photographer and I go to events that require that. But a lot of men do not wear suits on a regular basis, or have not wore a suit in years before their wedding day. A lot of the times they don't know how to put on a suit properly. So what ends up happening, if you don't have like the best man or one of the groomsmen help them put on their jacket, they're gonna put it on in very weird and awkward ways. Usually with their hands up or one hand in it, and they're trying to, and this is a moment in the day where you're trying to get photos. And what ends up happening is all of their photos are really like funky and weird, and it's like, you really can't use those photos, or I don't want to use those photos, to be honest with you. Utilize the wedding party. Have your best man tell the groom to put his arms straight back, and then the best man can just throw the jacket on and put it over them. So it's nice and smooth and it makes sense, instead of hands wailing and flying all over the place. That's just something that I've realized over the years. It's not super important, but it is at the same time. Number 6 is content is king for photographers. As a main shooter, we almost never have content of ourselves for social media and things of that nature. And yes, I'm hiring you to be a second shooter for my bride and my groom, but I'm also hiring you to work for me as well on a wedding day. And this is what I share with my second shooters. If you have downtime, not all the time you do, but certain moments throughout the day, I'm kind of handling everything. So I might be shooting the whole bridal party, and there's not really much for the second shooter to do in that 10 or 15 minutes. In those type of minutes, I just ask my second shooter, hey, if you don't mind, could you just get a couple photos of me taking photos of the bridal party, of the groom, of the bride, just so I have content to share on social media and YouTube, or maybe even get a couple little video clips for me, little 10, 15-second video clips for me, so I can use them in future YouTube videos or future social media content. Very quick stuff. This stuff doesn't take much time. And if you have downtime, take care of your main photographers. The more exposure that they can get with their content, the more that they can hire you to be a second shooter. Number 7 is compliment me, but don't be over my shoulder. And what I mean by that is, like I said earlier, I shoot the wedding day to be able to deliver a full wedding gallery to my clients, whether the second shooter was there or not. So what I'm really looking for from my second shooter in certain moments, like a first look, if I'm shooting with my 24 and my 50 millimeter, I would love for you to be shooting with like a 85 or a 70 to 200, so that even if you are standing right next to me or a couple feet over, you're getting different focal lengths, different angles, different vibes of the same scene. So I have more to deliver to my clients in their photo gallery. If you're just standing next to me and I'm shooting with the 50 and you're shooting with the 50, it kind of defeats the point of having a second photographer. So try your best, if not always, to be shooting different focal lengths and getting different angles than the main photographer, just so that you have more options. And number 8, my final tip is learn as much as you possibly can. A lot of photographers charge for their time to teach others. Many of them, like myself, I give a lot of free information out, but I do offer mentoring as well. If you're gonna be with me for 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, pick my brain. You know, if we got 2 minutes to pack up our stuff and go to the next location, ask me like, why did you use that lens? Why did you get that angle? What did you shoot? What focal length did you shoot that at? I'm going to answer it for you. This is how you learn as a second photographer. So get out of the day as much as you possibly can as a second shooter. Learn as much as you can, soak up as much game as you possibly can. That first photographer more than likely are going to answer all of your questions. We love as creatives to talk about our work. So I answer questions all day and it's in the moment. So you can literally ask me, why did you just do that 30 seconds ago? What made you put them here or there? You know what I'm saying? So get the most out of it, and that will allow you to go from being a second shooter to a main photographer. So hopefully this video was valuable for you all. Please like and share to somebody who may find this content valuable. And also in the comments, give me some of the things that you as a main photographer or you as a second photographer have done or like to do that I may have missed or not have brought up in this video. I would love to chit chat with you guys and go back and forth. So love is love, and until next time.